Part 53. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 530. This night was destined to be emotional. Lu Feng was resting in the middle of the night. He wanted to share this happiness with Zhang Xiaoyan. Looking at the time, it was estimated that she had already fallen asleep. The next day, when the sun rises and shines on this place, ordinary office workers go out early and start their work and life day after day. There were new newspapers in the newsstands on the street, and people passing by glanced at them in a hurry. The world is still so monotonous and even a little boring, but the electronics industry has collapsed, and it is not too much to shuffle cards overnight. Seeing that the building was in danger, GFN Electronics was revived overnight with full blood, and once again stood in the position of VCD overlord. There was already someone in front of the counter of the Golden Leopard VCD, but it was out of stock. After waiting for a while, a truck was parked in the back, and everyone helped carry the goods. Today, some people in some townships have begun to paint wall advertisements, and a large number of song CDs are being recorded in a hurry. At the same time, people from the marketing department contact the cross-talk teams, errands one, operas, songs, etc. between provinces, hoping to help them record them. Make a CD for joint promotion. The local TV stations' advertisements about the Golden Leopard VCD are bombarded in turn. Lu Feng held a lot of meetings in one day. At the same time, he visited the Talent Reserve Center and held a meeting on cooperation with universities. This year's package allocation quota is even lower. The conveying machine from the campus to the iron rice bowl is slowing down. Colleges and universities are helpless to students and parents. It is the best choice to put them in private enterprises. Some colleges and universities even conglomerate companies to deceive students, calling private companies a state-owned company, and making a fake distribution. Change will bring pains and harm the interests of some people. This stage is also the most chaotic stage. Students who come out of the school gate have a high gold content. After entering private enterprises in large numbers, they will help the outbreak of private enterprises. Many large-scale private enterprises have also discovered this. The battle of robbing people will be the main theme in the next 2 or 3 years. What Lu Feng said to the Talent Reserve Center is that no matter if you are cheating or strong, set tasks every year, even if it is from the school. I have to abduct the students in for me. People who stay in this way have a very low retention rate, so they need more quantity. Let them do it first. For a week, the daily sales remained at about 30,000 units. The factory in Suzhou began to adjust the production line. There will be 2 lines for the production of VCDs to further increase the output. The monthly sales volume will exceed 1 million units. Zhu Lidong excitedly said that the annual sales target of 5 million units should be achieved ahead of schedule. Lu Feng just smiled and said nothing. Even if there are no other competitors, the stock in the market will be exhausted. If you want to buy, you are buying them these days. When the market stock is exhausted, it will naturally drop. The finance department had been the happiest in the past few days. The general manager of finance was happy to eat every day. In the afternoon, Lu Feng called the finance people together for a meeting. In the conference room, the person in charge of finance was a little nervous, sitting there looking very uneasy. "What's wrong with you?" the vice president of finance asked. "I have a bad premonition. I always feel that President Lu is going to do something wrong," he sighed. "This account is really difficult to manage, and there is a risk of lack of money at any time." "President Lu, calm down. For large companies, finance is not only responsible for managing accounts and paying taxes, but also responsible for enterprise risk control, holding the approval power of project funds. In a large company with many shareholders, the person in charge of finance is the second in command of the company, the absolute helm of the company. As long as the financial review feels that the risk is too high, the president's proposal can be rejected. Here in Lu Feng, The financial worker is a miser, crying every time he asks for money. Lu Feng stepped in, coughed, followed by Feng Xiao. Everyone at the scene stood up. Lu Feng waved his hands and said, "God of wealth, all sit down." After sitting down, Lu Feng looked at the person in charge of finance and showed a smile. The other party almost cried when he saw this smile. "It's really a peaceful day, isn't it? Is your income pretty good recently?" Lu Feng asked. "It is still in the statistics, and the expenditure is relatively large. The marketing department has declared a batch of offline channels to open the cost. There are many provinces, mainly in the third and fourth quarters. The profit is really good, but it also costs a lot." He wanted to tell Lu Feng that he was a bit wealthy, so don't worry about it, let's relax for a few days. "Mr. Lu, in June, the bank's 200 million yuan expired. The bank called me a few days ago and communicated. We also ate in private. Then borrow it? Pay it back and then borrow it." Lu Feng raised his eyebrows and said, "When the money is in the hands of others, we still have the final say. Tell them to transfer the interest and pay the interest every year." "Our factory is mortgaged there," the person in charge of finance said anxiously. "You tell him, if he dares to accept it, I will dare to stop production. Accept this plan and accept it, if not pull it down." Lu Feng patted him on the shoulder and said, "We owe money, be tough, we are the master." Ah, the person in charge of finance was stunned. He could only sigh in his heart, the world is changing fast, and those who owe money are so shameless. According to the current sales situation, how long will it be possible to have a surplus? Excluding the applied expenditure items, Lu Feng asked. Now the daily profit is between 7 million and 8 million, and the monthly profit can reach about 200 million. The premise is that such sales can be stabilized. Last year, the financing was 270 million, and the R/U0026D company applied for 100 million. The new factory will invest 50 million yuan, and the new factory will spend 14 million on tables, chairs, benches, and other miscellaneous items, and the media company will spend. There are many ways to make money, and there are more places to spend money. The two factories add up to more than 40,000 employees. The salary is a very large expenditure, and there are many invisible places, such as canteens, business trips, and staff dormitories. Heating, work clothes, maintenance of the factory area, daily office losses, etc. Every day when I open my eyes, how much money is consumed by this factory, I can't count. Excluding the budget applied by the marketing department, if there is no other action this year, it should be profitable by the end of the year, and it is expected to make a profit of about 80 million, the person in charge of finance said. 80 million? For such a large company that designs multiple industries, this amount of money is pitiful, and the market fluctuates a little, and the money is not enough to fill the hole. "Mr. Lu, my idea is to cut off the expansion budget of the marketing department first. If the budget for advertising is too much, you can also cut off part of it. In this way, the account at the end of the year will look much better, and the money from the bank will be paid back. It can make a profit of about 100 million yuan, reducing the company's debt." He looked at the report and said, "The new factory area is also in the state of mortgage loans." Lu Feng looked at this old boy and really suspected that he was an undercover agent sent by the bank. "Why do you always think about paying the bank money?" Lu Feng stared at him and wondered. "I also know that the new factory is all borrowed, and as long as the debt does not exceed 150%, there is no problem. The market prospect is good, and the debt is not a problem. Doing 200% is trivial, and without real mortgages, we can put tomorrow on the gambling table. The risk is too high." The person in charge of finance wrinkled his face. "Something happened, will I arrest you?" Lu Feng asked about other aspects, and took a look at the report. He did not intend to repay the debt of the new factory before 2000. Drag as long as you can. The Dongguan municipal government agreed to pay 30 million interest-free, but it hasn't been paid yet, Lu Feng wondered. We've called several times, and the other party has spoken for 2 days. Hurry up, we can still let him drag our money. My factory has started production. For this, I have to spend some money every week to take the motherboard to Hefei for assembly, and give the money to before June. I'm coming back. Lu Feng said it very confidently, as if he did not borrow money from He Jiali, as if He Jiali owed him money. Feng Xiao, who was sitting on the side, was also amazed. This kind of spirit that opened his eyes to money is really not available to ordinary people. 18 million from the Northeast hasn't come back yet, Lu Feng asked after looking at it. Mr. Zhu went to urge several times, ran several times, and all got closed. Lu Feng looked at the money. He had heard of the madness of the current triangular debt, especially in areas where state-owned enterprises gather, and it is very common to fight each other. This matter once hindered the economic development of the region. I didn't feel like it was dealt with throughout the 1990s. Many accounts eventually became dead accounts. I went to Zhongsan with the accounts. Zhongsan said that the accounts were transferred to Li Si and went to find them. Li Si said it was transferred to Wang Wu. Tisk, Lu Feng slapped his mouth and said, those who owe debts are really thick-skinned. Everyone in the audience was staring at Lu Feng. Just now, you seem to owe others money, that's not the case. How can you be thick-skinned when others owe you money? This money must be returned. With such a large amount, it is easy to have a bad debt. Lu Feng looked at the ledger and thought for a while, then said, I have nothing to do for the past 2 days, so I will go get it. Going to the Northeast, Feng Xiao looked a little excited. After briefly asking about financial issues, Lu Feng could sense that the financial person in charge had been under a lot of pressure. At the end of last year, when the first financing failed, he was sitting in the office crying. Lu Feng gave a few words of encouragement, saying that he would not have much expansion plans or aggressive deployments this year, mainly waiting for the R/U0026D company to produce results. After leaving the conference room, Feng Xiao followed behind Lu Feng and said excitedly, I heard from my dad that my ancestors came from the Northeast. Really? Come, tell me, Nagata. Lu Feng said towards him. Then what? Feng Xiao's head filled with question marks. Forget it, you're not pure anymore. Remember, after going there, the way of greeting is different. It's different from when you were in Xiangjiang, Lu Feng said slightly jokingly. What do you say hello? Feng Xiao asked curiously. Just stare at him and ask him, what are you looking at? Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 531. When Lu Feng found out about the account, he had already called a group of executives to the office for a meeting. Now he has to cash in cash, no matter who he is, even his own full salary. Because once the debt is owed, it is too difficult to recover the money, not to mention private enterprises. Many state-owned enterprises, such as GRI, were held up by debts in the early 1990s. Later, Miss Dong took over the task and went to Hefei to ask for the account. As long as you dare to take credit, someone will dare to take the goods. As for asking for money, just wait, I don't know how many companies have been dragged down by this kind of debt. It is most in line with corporate profits to pay for the money and deliver the goods. Lu Feng went to ask for the money in person because he was afraid that other dealers would know. When they saw it, you gave it to outsiders on credit. We are all our own people. It's not appropriate to not give it to me on credit, right? As soon as this opening is opened, countless people will be cheeky and take credit in various ways, which must be blocked, especially a company that is short of money like GFeng Electronics. Lu Feng is very clear about the company's capital problem. I owe others, yes, others owe me, no. Before leaving, Lu Feng first went to the new factory, met with He Jiali, and urged the 30 million in person. He Jiali said that the finances were relatively tight and he would take a while. Lu Feng looked at the factories near the industrial park. He Jiali was already promoting VCD-related industries, especially in CD raw materials, CD production, VCD accessories, electronic accessories, and some tools for repairing electronic products. With the help of Golden Leopard VCD, he has attracted a large number of medium-sized enterprises. With the arrival of Jiafeng Electronics, the light on Huang Youwei's hat has gradually shifted to He Jiali. Now He Jiali saw that Lu Feng always had a smile on his face, and even when he got into the car, he let Lu Feng get in the car first, and the two were polite for a long time. The new factory has completely resumed the 3-shift production mode. Lu Feng focused on product quality supervision, safe production, corporate culture, and improved management. 2 days later, Lu Feng received the contract, bills, and other documents he had signed, and ordered a plane to Liaoning. This time there were only Lu Feng and Feng Xiao. The day before she left, Zhang Fengxia was sitting in the office, looking at Feng Xiao and jokingly said, "Your father's investment is really worth it, and you need to teach it hand to hand wherever you go." When you think of the Northeast, what comes to your mind? If you ask this question to young people more than 20 years later, they will tell you that live broadcasts, shouting my, laade, boldness, etc., but now the Northeast is the pearl of the North. Now for the Northeast. In addition to being wealthy, many people still have the impression of hitting roe deer and scooping fish. The eldest son of domestic industry, the gathering place of large state-owned enterprises, the gathering place of large institutions of higher learning, is also the area with the strictest implementation of family planning. Since 1995, the southern cities have gradually entered the coastal trade and foreign capital, and the per capita GDP has begun to catch up with the Northeast. This is the last brilliance of the Big Brother. The accent speaks proudly of his hometown. After 1995, the reform of state-owned enterprises entered the deep water area. Except for some extremely important state-owned enterprises that did not move, others were mixed and reformed, and severe pain began to appear. It was also at this time that the population began to flow out, the southern cities rose, and a large number of people flowed to the south after the mass layoffs. Find a way out. The wave of migrant workers began. During this period of time, the currency depreciated, the global situation was unstable, and prices began to soar. However, the wages of southern enterprises, due to the large population, dropped a lot compared to before. A large number of foreign capital have seen the dividend of cheap population. In addition, the first industrial upgrade has been completed, the initial infrastructure construction has been completed, and supporting industries have initially formed. This batch of laid-off people has formed a virtuous circle in the job market. Looking at the present after more than 20 years, it seems that everything is given by foreign capital, as long as it is open, and if there is no first industrial upgrade, those foreign-funded enterprises will not come. Every step of this country is taken by oneself step by step. When flowers bloom, butterflies are attracted, butterflies gather honey, and they turn around and say that flowers bloom because of their own coming, which is extremely shameless. Lu Feng, who was sitting on the plane, was a little confused. He leaned on the seat and closed his eyes. Feng Xiao next to him looked out. He heard his father say about the Northeast many times, but he knew that it was cold. Tell him that because of the war, the ancestors left their hometown and moved south all the way. Unexpectedly, after a few generations, they moved to Xiangjiang, which can be regarded as a displacement. The air in Liaoning in mid-April was still cold. When the plane was about to descend, Lu Feng saw snow in the field in the distance. Feng Xiao looked out curiously, turned his head and said to Lu Feng, "Brother Feng, it looks so cold." "It should be near zero, okay," Lu Feng said casually. "Brother Feng, I find that every time we go out, we take economy class, which is a little uncomfortable, and first class doesn't cost much, Feng Xiao said while moving. Thinking about it, there are a lot of faults. Do you know how many people have never even seen an airplane? Lu Feng said angrily. 99% of people at your age are flying with an airplane. There is only one relationship. What? Come on, Lu Feng said as he unbuckled his seat belt. Get off the plane. As soon as I got off the plane, the cold air hit my face. Before I came, I had prepared thicker clothes, but I was still a little uncomfortable for a while. The two companies that owe money are Iron and Steel Group, one is Beigong and the other is Bengzi Iron and Steel. The subsidiaries of these two companies have centrally purchased a batch of TV sets for internal employee resettlement housing, which is a kind of welfare. Before I came, I had notified the subordinate company, Beigong Real Estate. When I left the airport, a man in his 30s was waiting at the airport, holding a sign in his hand that said "Welcome to Jiafeng Electronics Chairman Lu Feng and his team." "Hello," Lu Feng walked over and said. The other party glanced at Lu Feng and asked, "Are you President Lu?" "Yes, are you here to pick us up?" Lu Feng said to him. "Get in the car first, it's a little cold." "Oh, this guy is so young." I still looked at Gata. "I saw a man in his 50s just now, and thought it was you. Come and come, get in the car, we are cold here." The other party was very enthusiastic and talked a lot. We chatted and got into the car. We walked all the way to see that the construction here has become more complete. The municipal facilities, infrastructure, street lights, green belts, etc. are all planned in an orderly manner. Compared with other small cities, like Two Kingdoms. "Are you here to ask for the bill?" The driver turned his head and looked at Lu Feng and the two in surprise. "Yes, we hope to have a good talk with your company," Feng Xiao said politely. "What is your company? We are a unit, so tell you, it's not good. Years ago, many units were run on money and could not survive. You asked me for the account, and I asked you for the account, and they all fought." The driver had a serious look on his face. "Fighting?" Feng Xiao looked at Lu Feng with a face full of astonishment, and asked, "Are you still fighting?" "It means fighting. It's difficult to work as a unit now, and the benefits are not good. It's not as rich as a few years ago. There are too many people. Those who are related have become iron rice bowls. Let me tell you this, there are more than 10,000 people who are sick. You say these people suffering from illness, getting salary every month, how much does it cost? I know a buddy, he went to work for a month, and he never saw anyone after that. A barbecue place." The driver complained about the troubles in the unit. Now the iron rice bowl has been clearly marked, and he went to serve as a soldier for 2 years. After returning, he spent some money and went in. Spend a little more money, find a hospital to open a case list, apply for an illness, and can't go to work. Then have you ever thought that one day the unit will fail? Or buy out the seniority? Lu Feng asked. "How is it possible? This unit belongs to the state, and it eats the country's food, and some people are clamoring for it to collapse. It's pure bullshit and it's impossible to collapse. If it collapses, the country will be over. How many people will be laid off, and society will be in chaos," said. Lu Feng smiled when he heard such remarks. These words should represent the real thoughts of most people now. When the car reached the downstairs of an old-fashioned building, the driver turned around and asked, "Two bosses, are you paying at your own expense or at public expense?" "We don't have public funds, we are a private enterprise, is there any difference?" Lu Feng wondered. Private enterprise, the driver was stunned for a moment, his eyes looking at Lu Feng lost the enthusiasm he had just now, and he said, "Are you going to a guest house? If you don't, there is an expensive hotel in front of you. Go to the hotel." The car stopped in front of the hotel, and Lu Feng got out of the car and asked, "Where is your general manager?" Mr. Hao ordered me to have dinner with you in the evening, and I just said this. I don't understand what the boss means. You can contact him when you get there. Knowing this, Lu Feng would not finish it in a while, so he carried his suitcase into the hotel. In the office of Beigong Real Estate, there were 2 or 3 men sitting. The driver pushed open the door and said, "Mr. Hao, someone has been delivered to the hotel." "Okay, nothing to do with you." Mr. Hao waved his hand. "President Hao, who are you?" the man next to him asked. "I want to pay for it. Didn't I buy a batch of TV sets from the South last year and sell them at a low price in the resettlement house? It's a welfare. The money hasn't been paid yet." "How many TV sets came in?" "I don't remember how many. Let's post 1/3 of it, and the rest will be distributed to the leaders. I still keep 7 or 8 sets, and all of them are sold later. Last year, when Lao Li's son got married, he said hello to me and gave him a place," Mr. Hao said casually. "He's really thinking about going so far to ask for the bill. Don't pay attention to him, just pass it to the group company, let's a subordinate real estate take care of that business," the man next to him persuaded. "Look, this is what you don't understand. Those units that asked for accounts at the beginning of the year did not ask for the accounts, but instead posted a lot of money. This boss has traveled thousands of miles. He is determined to ask for money, and he wants money. Can't you pay for it?" Mr. Hao raised his eyebrows and said confidently, "I can kill him." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 532. Mr. Hao, who is 39 this year, is already the head of the real estate company of Beigong. He has no background. He is in this position at this age, and he is definitely a successful person in the eyes of the people around him. In the management of resettlement houses and family areas, he has the most power. It's just that the pits are all small money. At the end of the year, many people ask for the bill, and they invite you to eat, drink, and give away money. Hao has been jealous for a long time, and now it is finally his turn. GFN Electronics called and said that the chairman was coming to talk. Mr. Hao was so excited that he couldn't sleep. How could he let go of such a big fish? After resting at the hotel in the afternoon, Mr. Hao asked someone to come over to be polite. He would treat guests to dinner at this hotel in the evening, so that Lu Feng should not worry, he would definitely pay back the money he owed. After the people left, Feng Xiao closed the door and said, "People are quite polite, this account is not as difficult as you said. The more this is, the more troublesome it will be. If he hides directly, I'll be at ease. It's a big deal to chase after him." Lu Feng leaned on the chair, took the kettle and added some water to the teacup. "What kind of medicine are you selling?" In the evening, Mr. Hao put on his mink, put the leather bag under his arm, trimmed his hair, stood in front of the mirror and tightened the belt, and stomped his feet. There was a knock on the door of the office, and a thin man with row-headed eyes came in and asked, "Mr. Hao, Gold Coast at night, I'll treat you to a guest." "Is the 26th here?" Mr. Hao asked casually. "Which is the 26th, you can spend as much as you want, I'll pay the bill, and the house in the unit." "I'm busy, I'll talk about it another day." Mr. Hao picked up the lighter from the table and walked towards the door, passing the man, and instructed, "I like riding foreign horses recently, you know." "Okay, then you are busy first, this matter." "Say more." "I bought you a cigarette." "Put it on the table." Mr. Hao's voice came from the corridor, and it was getting farther and farther. In the private room on the 3rd floor, Lu Feng and Feng Xiao had already arrived. A few minutes later, Mr. Hao entered the private room under the leadership of the foreman. Lu Feng stood up with a smile on his face, stretched out his hand and said, "Hello, I am the chairman of GFN Electronics, Lu Feng. This is my assistant. Mr. Hao looked at the empty private room. Frowning secretly, he shook hands and let go, and said, "Just the three of us." "Is there anyone else?" Lu Feng wondered. "Tisk." Mr. Hao slapped his mouth in dissatisfaction and said, "Mr. Lu, you can't do this either. You have to eat and drink with an old girl, otherwise it's tasteless." Of course Lu Feng knew what he was talking about, and said with a smile, "It's the first time we met today, and I'm not familiar with this place. Mr. Hao, please forgive me for the inconsistency. Today is mainly about the debt issue." "Stop, stop." Mr. Hao sat down on the main seat, put his handbag aside, and said, "Eat first. Mr. Lu sees your age and calls you bro, and bro tells you to pay the bill. That's not what you want. You have arranged it properly. Brother has something in mind." Lu Feng smiled awkwardly, used this routine to fool himself, sat down and said, "Brother, if you are happy, my brother will definitely arrange it properly. What a big deal." Mr. Hao listened to him running on himself, stared at Lu Feng very dissatisfied, and asked, "Do you want the money?" "Yes, I came all the way to ask for the bill. I'm young, and I don't understand some rules, so don't take offense." Lu Feng handed over the menu and said, "Brother, what do you want?" After finally catching a fat sheep, Mr. Hao couldn't take it lightly. He didn't read the menu and asked, "A lobster that weighs more than 4 pounds. Sorry, it's not that big. It's as big as it gets." Seeing his big mouth, Lu Feng hurriedly grabbed the menu and said, "Let's follow the menu. The standard of 100 yuan per person, look at it." 10 bottles of Maotai, Mr. Hao ordered. "Brother, I can't drink, my brother doesn't drink that much," Lu Feng said hurriedly. Mr. Hao was extremely unhappy. How could this young man be so ignorant? The more wine on the table is to get it when he leaves, and if you invite guests to dinner, you have to be prepared for the other party to eat and drink. 1 bottle is fine, Lu Feng ordered, "don't be too expensive, just a medium price." "Mr. Lu, do you understand the rules?" Hao couldn't help it, staring at Lu Feng and asking. "What's the rules? I'm young and ignorant. If there is anything wrong, please point it out." Lu Feng looked at him with a stunned look. Mr. Hao, when there are many people who give gifts and walk around, he definitely stands up and walks away at this moment. He didn't want to miss Lu Feng, and felt that he was young and ignorant, so he would just talk about it himself. As the food came, Lu Feng and General Hao called him brothers. Feng Xiao was not very suitable for this kind of occasion, and occasionally added a sentence next to it. "Brother, we are really in a hurry for this money. If you pay attention to the electronics industry, you will know that recently, our business has really been unable to survive. Otherwise, we will not talk to you, right?" Lu Feng asked him. "As for this matter, it's not difficult to say, but it's not easy to say. Brother sees you young, so I'll give you some pointers." Mr. Hao lit a cigarette and said to Lu Feng, "The money has to come from the group company." "Well, but, I have to report to my brother, because the unit is short of money, so I want to give you money there. You have to spend some money and find a relationship. Is it straightforward enough?" Feng Xiao had already heard what Hao always meant, but Lu Feng seemed not to understand, and said happily, "Brother, you report it first. We are related, you still have to help with this." "Why should I help you?" Mr. Hao didn't care about being obscure or not, and said to Lu Feng, "Brother is happy, everything is easy to do, understand?" Lu Feng Mu shook his head dumbly and said, "No. I understand very well. Look at you, let's do it, I told you to do it." Mr. Hao was also very helpless, and said, "After dinner, let's go to sing karaoke, find some old girls, be happy. If you want to do this, listen to me, you can find a way to get another 5 million funds." 5 million, Feng Xiao called out and said, We are here to ask for the bill, not to send money. Why are you an assistant talking so much? It's been a night, that babbler, eat your meal, and go out after eating, Hao scolded Feng Xiao. Feng Xiao's face instantly turned ugly. Brother Feng had never reprimanded him like that, but when a young manager said so, he was about to have a seizure. Children, don't take it seriously, Lu Feng asked Mr. Hao, what's the matter with 5 million? Brother, let me tell you, I usually don't tell anyone about this, just because you are relatively simple, and our unit's funds are relatively tight. The accounts you have in Bengong Group have actually been consolidated. There are 3 things at home. Son, let's start with the tight spot first. The last time I held a meeting, the leader said, focus on the big and let go of the small. Mr. Hao looked at Lu Feng with an unfathomable expression on his face. What does it have to do with the 5 million? Lu Feng was puzzled. You young man, you have to spread the word. The meaning of catching the big and letting go of the small means that you should pay the more debts first, and the less money you owe will not be paid first. You now have 18 million debts. The priority is not high. If you lend him another 5 million, it will be 23 million. This is a large sum of money. Report it to the financial side, and the leader will sign the money immediately. Do you understand? Mr. Hao raised his glass and said, I really don't tell him to ordinary people. If the other party doesn't repay the money, I'll lend it to him again. If he still doesn't pay it back, I'll borrow it again. I'll ask him to owe me 1 billion yuan. I'm scared that the other party will pay back the money immediately. Is that the reason? Lu Feng asked. Almost. Feng Xiao couldn't help laughing out loud. Does anyone believe this kind of nonsense? Not to mention, there are people who really believe it, and there are quite a few people who believe it. Because of the debt, many companies also focus on the big and let go of the small. The premise is that the borrower is an upstream company. What are you laughing at? It's so funny, Mr. Hao asked. Don't care about him. Lu Feng thought about it seriously and said, this matter is more important, and I have to talk to other shareholders of the company. Let's talk, let's drink this glass of wine, and the Jinfen people will go, Mr. Hao said and took up the glass. Lu Feng pressed the glass down, touched Mr. Hao, drank it all, and asked the waiter to settle the bill. Including the private room fee, it only cost more than 500 yuan, and there was more than 200 yuan for a bottle of Maotai. Mr. Hao walked in front, Lu Feng followed. Feng Xiao whispered, Brother Feng, this person can do things, this is obviously here to make money. It's just like this. You can come across all kinds of monsters, ghosts, snakes, and gods. First, get to the bottom of it. You can't spend too much money on him. After you taste the sweetness, the account will be indefinitely long, Lu Feng whispered, and strode toward him. Go ahead, follow Mr. Hao, and give him a cigarette. The most difficult thing in the world is to ask for an account, which is enough to drive a person crazy. It's okay to have a right mind, but a lot of people with a bad mind will ask for a card, make all kinds of disgusting demands, and finally play with you, but still don't pay back the money. I stopped 2 taxis and went straight to Jinfen. Karaoke is the predecessor. For some places with more business activities and higher consumption, many karaokes have been transformed into private rooms. Because we need to provide some private services, the kind of booths and group dances are considered low-end. What we are going to tonight is business karaoke. Good leadership. At the door, a dozen Ying-Ying-Yan and the little brother shouted in unison. President Hao put his hands on his back, his stomach was stretched out, he nodded slightly, and walked inside. Leader, do you have a reservation? A foreman came over and asked. No, open your most expensive private room for me, then serve foreign wine, and order a few more Yanmars, Hao said proudly. When the foreman heard this, he instantly grinned, this is because he met a big money, and hurriedly said, please come in. Feng Xiao saw that he didn't have a good time tonight and didn't look back, and said in a low voice, "Brother Feng, I haven't done anything yet, so it's spent." "What are you afraid of?" Lu Feng waved his hands and said, "Let's play first." Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 533. There are many people like Mr. Hao now. He is at least the general manager of a real estate company. Many people pretend to be various names to bluff people. Fan Debiao type characters are not uncommon in this black land. Entering the private room, there are a row of sofas and coffee tables, and there is no large TV, but a projector is hung behind, and the microphone is also a wired microphone. The decoration inside is really average compared to 20 years later. Lu Feng glanced at the environment. 4 or 5 men with long hair and loose suits were sitting on the sofa taking a photo. Business karaoke, the environment is not important, mainly depends on the little girl. Mr. Hao sat down with Erlang's legs crossed and a cigarette in his mouth, followed by a woman in her 30s with makeup on her face, thick hair, and a wavy perm. "Hello leaders, our lobby manager here, Xiao Jing. If you need anything, please tell me. I can do it for you. I hope you have a good time here," the lobby manager said generously. "This is the leader from the south, our President Lu. Bring a bottle of all your foreign wines. If you don't have enough, ask for more. Also, find a few little girls." Hao waved his hand and said, "It's beautiful, clever, do you know? Arrangement. Don't worry, come right now." The lobby manager went out to take a look, and Lu Feng raised his head to look at the projector above. In fact, the sales of this kind of product have been good. In recent years, the karaoke market for this kind of private room has been exploding. At the beginning of the year, the marketing department also handed in a preliminary market survey on projectors. The annual sales volume in the market exceeded 1 million units last year, forming a large market pool. While thinking about the market, the door was pushed open again, and a group of Yingying Yanyan walked in, all about 1.7 meters tall, with high heels on their feet, basically skirts above the knees, and their faces with makeup. In this day and age, if these women are walking on the street, they will definitely turn heads. "Good leader," the girls bowed and greeted in unison. Feng Xiao looked at this scene. His whole body was a little nervous, and he glanced at Lu Feng quietly. "What should I do when I start playing?" Lu Feng didn't think about that. He found an interesting thing. In the south, people in the service industry would call customers bosses or bosses, while in the north, they would call them leaders, and the lesser ones would call them GE. Mr. Hao turned his head to look at Lu Feng and asked, "President Lu, which one do you like?" Lu Feng glanced at it and said to himself, "Their makeup is thicker." Lu Feng even saw a girl with green eyelids lit by the light, like a living ghost. But this kind of makeup is the coquettish feature of this era, with red lips and green eyelids. "It's fine, as long as Mr. Hao has a good time, I don't care," Lu Feng said politely. The eyes of these girls are all on Lu Feng. They can keenly feel that Lu Feng is the one who pays the money tonight. Moreover, Lu Feng is very young and his appearance is not bad. For them, such a guest is hard to come by. Then leave it all. Mr. Hao waved his hand, extraordinarily bold, and a row of girls beamed with joy. Such a rich boss is rare. After Mr. Hao finished speaking, 7 or 8 girls squeezed onto the sofa, and Lu Feng was half crowded, and they all rushed to the top. Mr. Hao looked at the 2 people left and right, and always felt that there was something wrong, and they were not very energetic. "That, Xiao Jing, do you have a Yanmer here?" Mr. Hao asked. "Yes, but you are already with other guests. Next time you come to play, call ahead and I will ask her to wait for you," the lobby manager said apologetically. The wine on the table has been laid out. A few young men poured the wine. The lobby manager picked up a glass to apologize, and drank it all in one go. The girls are all veterans of the hot scene. They can drink, play games, sing, dance, and do everything. The two girls kept squeezing on Lu Feng, including the green eyelid. Go to accompany Mr. Hao. Hao is always an important guest, Lu Feng instructed the two of them. Feng Xiao was drinking with a glass of wine. Brother Feng was beside him. He couldn't let go. If Lu Feng wasn't there, he would definitely be able to play. He would have attended more crazy parties abroad than this. Lu Feng and Mr. Hao were drinking, and a girl started to sing, and the private room became lively. Brother, I'm happy, everything is easy to do. How much money can the mother spend? A fraction of 18 million is enough to play here for a month. Mr. Hao blushed as he talked to Lu. As Feng was talking, he pulled the girl next to him with one hand into his arms. The girl giggled and looked extremely dissolute. Brother, I'm really asking you about this, my brother. I believe you now, really. If you can get this money back, you will not only save your brother, but also tens of thousands of employees. Lu Feng raised his glass and touched it. Said, my brother is not familiar with this place, you should take care of it. In the past 2 days, my brother will introduce you to some leaders, have a meal, sing a song, take a sauna, and then do what I told you, that is, the 5 million thing. I will tell you, in one sentence, there's nothing wrong, Mr. Hao said excitedly. I'm done, Lu Feng said and drank it. The two girls stood in front and began to twist their bodies. The girl next to her screamed constantly, adding to the atmosphere, and asked Lu Feng, leader, do you want to fly one? Flying one? What is flying one? Lu Feng asked in confusion. Mr. Hao pointed with his hand and shouted, fly for me. The two girls twisted their bodies, took out something from their clothes and threw it out. One was thrown on Mr. Hao's face, and the other was hung on Lu Feng's head. Lu Feng reached out and touched it down. Looking at the hood, he was speechless. He could only say that young people after more than 20 years do not understand the joy of his father when he was young. The colorful lantern ball on the roof began to turn, and Mr. Hao stood up excitedly and walked over to the coffee table. Feng Xiao was pulled by two girls to dance. Leader, come twist for a while and sweat, a girl pulled Lu Feng's arm. The dances here are not serious dances. The Latin, national standard, ballroom dances, etc. danced in serious places are all veneer dances. It is this kind of dance that the people call the wives' ion dance. Drinking, dancing, and all kinds of exciting actions are only what you can't think of, and they wouldn't play without them. Even if King Zhou saw such a scene, he probably could only sigh, damn, you still know how to play. It was lively for more than an hour, and half of the wine was drunk. Mr. Hao obviously drank too much. He stood up and walked outside. A girl next to him saw him leaving and asked Lu Feng, leader, are you satisfied? Satisfied and satisfied, very good, make persistent efforts, Lu Feng said politely. Mr. Hao went to the toilet and stood there to wash his hands after coming out. A girl came out of the women's toilet, blonde and blue-eyed, over 1.7 meters tall, and looked like 25 or 6. Mr. Hao's eyes were on her, and she also looked at Mr. Hao with a smile on her face. Why are you here? Come on, give me a kiss. A man in his 40s came over, hugged the girl from the back without saying a word, and stuck his head out to kiss. The girl was frightened, gave a cry, turned her head to look at the man, said a few words, and finally could only push it away with her hands, saying, on. Private room, private room. Mr. Hao also knew that people must be here to play. He didn't say much, he waved his hand, stared at him, and prepared people. Dude, what are you looking at? This dude wanted to kiss but didn't get it. He was already angry, but Mr. Hao kept staring at him, and felt even more insulted. Mr. Hao drank a little wine, and he was not a coward. He replied, what are you doing? What do you mean? Can't you just look at you? Are you humming looking for trouble? Are you looking for a cut? The other party got angry and stepped forward and stared at President Howe fiercely. Don't come out to play if you can't afford it, you know? Don't have enough money? Come to brother's private room, brother has some money. Mr. Howe greeted the girl. The girl didn't understand anything except the word money. Who's stumbling? Who looks down on? The man was annoyed and grabbed Mr. Howe's collar. He also drank a little too much. Mr. Howe was instantly angry, raised his hand and gave him a slap in the neck. With the slap, the back of the head buzzing. Go to Nima, dog basket, the other party scolded, rushing up and punching. The two instantly slammed into a ball, and the girl next to him hurriedly called someone. The two of them both drank and tore the bar for a long time. They were stopped by the security guard. The elder brother on the opposite side was obviously on fire. He turned his head and walked towards his private room. 6 or 7 men in their 30s and 40s came out of the private room, all with flushed faces. As for whether it was caused by drinking, I don't know. Seeing this battle, Mr. Howe turned around and called for someone, pushed open the private room door, and shouted to Lu Feng, "Brother, if something happens to my brother, can you help me?" "Help? Absolutely help, you sit first." Lu Feng thought he had drunk too much. "Then you come out, I will fight with people and help stand up, I will call them now." Fighting? Lu Feng felt a little stunned in his heart. This kind of entertainment is the easiest to do. He stood up and walked outside, wanting to see what was going on. The girls in the seats were having fun, and there was no need to serve others. It was much easier tonight. When I got out of the private room, I saw that there were security guards outside, and the lobby manager also came to persuade them. Being unfamiliar with this place, and the fact that people in this place are really scary when they talk, they scream like they are going to kill people. Feng Xiao is a little scared. "Brother Feng, what should I do?" Feng Xiao asked in a low voice. "If this matter is placed in the city where the Jiafeng electronics factory is located, it is a trivial matter. The key is just here today, and no one knows it. No matter how rich or powerful you are, it will not be easy to do here." Lu Feng asked briefly, only to realize that he was helpless because of a Yanma, and he talked about it all night, and finally he was planted here. The middle-aged man opposite saw Mr. Howe calling someone out, and shouted to Lu Feng, "What are you looking at? What about you? What are you looking at?" "Brother Feng, don't be impulsive." Feng Xiao stopped Lu Feng and told him to go back. Lu Feng stretched out his hand and pushed Feng Xiao away, and whispered to him, "It's all right, the other party didn't dare to do anything to me," so he stepped forward and said, "I think you look good, what the hell?" The other party was stunned for a moment and said, "You kid is a good person, I don't care about you." Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 534. Mr. Howe is not a person to be easy to mess with. He turned around and called the company. He walked over and pointed at the other party and shouted, "Don't humming go, I'm shaking people. If you have a basket, don't make a fuss. Just do it in a while. Don't wait for a while, come." The other party was about to rush forward as he spoke. The security hurriedly stopped him, and a security captain came over with the appearance of a security guard and shouted, "What are you doing? Are you fighting here? Don't ask, whose business is this? I don't care about Nima, I don't kill him today, I have his last name." A group of people were about to rush up when they were talking. 7 or 8 security guards stopped them. The security captain shouted, "If you want to fight, it doesn't matter if you kill people. If you do it here, you won't give me wolf face." After the security captain finished speaking, he pulled his clothes away, the big gold chain around his neck leaked out, and the dragon and tiger tattoos were tattooed on his shoulders, which was extremely intimidating. "Go to the rivers and lakes to find out. I, Lang Biao, are also famous and famous. I used to make waves in Kongping. Everyone knows that there is no one to control this kind of place, and the brains have long been beaten. Everyone is more restrained in the face of Lang Biao, and people eat this bowl of rice. Feng Xiao was too familiar with people like Lang Biao, so he quietly pulled Lu Feng and said, "Brother Feng, there are too many clubs like this, we can't afford it." "Calm down," Lu Feng stood there calmly. Even in Xiangjiang, Feng Xiao's base camp, faced with bad boys, some low-level gangsters who join the sect, also have a headache. A group of people were clamoring to go out and fight. If there is no end to the fight tonight, Mr. Hao felt that his own people were coming soon, so he walked out, turned his head and said to Lu Feng, "Brother, don't be afraid, my brother is not a scumbag here." Lu Feng agreed and walked out, as if he was going to stand up for President Hao tonight. Feng Xiao hurriedly followed, and said in a low voice, "Brother Feng, don't get involved, we are unfamiliar, this Hao. I don't always feel good about you, if something goes wrong, I won't help you." "Don't worry about it, I know it," Lu Feng said coldly. Feng Xiao looked at Lu Feng's back and looked so strong. At this moment, he was more like a hot-blooded young man. No matter where he was or how many people there were, as long as it made him unhappy, he would dare to fight against 100. Feng Xiao spat on the ground. He always felt that Lu Feng was not like a young man, he didn't have that kind of bloody feeling. He found it tonight. Just do it. The 3 vans were parked not far away, the doors were opened, and a group of young people walked down, swearing and holding things in their hands. At the entrance of the lobby, more than a dozen people stood scattered to watch the excitement, and some even whispered. Feng Xiao rolled up his sleeves and was about to walk forward, but Lu Feng grabbed him and asked, "What are you doing?" "Fight. Are you mentally ill?" "Retreat," Lu Feng pulled him back. "It's them, let me die, brother, give it to me," Mr. Hao shouted and waved his hands behind him, and he rushed up. Feng Xiao was pulled behind a small tree in the distance, his bloody heart was freezing at the moment. Brother Feng did not change, he was still the same Brother Feng. "You're stupid, go up in a fight," Lu Feng stared at him. "Why is this kid still beside him?" "I thought." "Why?" "There are those who are rushing to take advantage, but I have never heard of those who are rushing to take advantage. Who cares about you when you fight, who will take care of you when you hit a hole, and the swarms are scattered, who cares about you?" Lu Feng educated him. "I think we are all young people. Besides, in Xiangjiang, didn't you slap Tang Zongren in the face?" Feng Xiao whispered. "No one was there that day, it was a mess, and besides, I slapped him and backed away." Lu Feng saw that he was working, and said, "Go to the side of the road, take a taxi back to the hotel, just don't need to pay the bill, let's go." Feng Xiao was very speechless. As a young man, he sometimes felt that Lu Feng was too sloppy in his work and had no sense of loyalty. He also told his father about this feeling. Mr. Feng told him that the reason for letting him follow Lu Feng was to learn something, how many young people ruined themselves because of the so-called loyalty. After stopping a taxi, Lu Feng went straight to the hotel without looking back. Mr. Hao and the 2 gangs finished the fight, and one of them overcame the other. After showing off their power for a long time, the 2 sides left. As for the police, there is really no need to call the police for the fight now. "Where's my brother?" Mr. Hao looked around and found that Lu Feng was gone. The lobby manager and Lang Biao came out and said to Mr. Hao, "Are you still playing?" "What time is it?" "I won't play anymore. Damn it, my mood is ruined." "Where is my brother?" Mr. Hao asked. He had a bad feeling. "We don't know. If you don't want to play anymore, please go to the front desk and settle the bill with me," the lobby manager said with a standard smile. "You spent a total of 8,329 yuan, and I will give you a fraction. 8,000 is fine." When he was fighting just now, Hao was always so imposing, how embarrassing he was now. He didn't bring any money when he went out. He wanted to eat Lu Feng, but he didn't expect this grandson to run away. Just write down the account and write about Beigong real estate, Hao ordered. Sorry, no credit. Beijing Steel, can I owe you? Don't you give me face. Mr. Hao stretched out his hand and took a pen from his pocket. Don't say it's Beigong, it's Shenfei's, and they don't keep accounts, Lang Biao said. Mr. Hao cursed Lu Feng for a while in his heart. All the little brothers who helped him fight just now were watching. He couldn't save face. The man who begged him to do something called and came to the rescue. After returning to the hotel to wash up, Lu Feng called Feng Xiao over and said, sit down first. If you encounter the incident at night later, don't rush up when your mind is hot. What kind of brotherhood is there before the fight? If something goes wrong, no one cares. Do you understand? I know. Feng Xiao sat there, as if he had some ideas. If you have something to say, don't hold back. Lu Feng poured himself a glass of water and sat down. We're inviting people to eat and play, and it's not a good idea to escape the bill in the end, isn't it right? Feng Xiao felt that Lu Feng had done a bit too much, and said, I don't have a good face, and I don't have much money. Face? You also listened to me when I was eating. He completely treated me as a madman. This money is not worth it. If I meet a second fool and be fooled by him to walk away 5 million, why are you being polite to such a person, even if you give it to me? When he spends this money, he turns around and tells others that you are a turtle. Brother Feng, what is a turtle? Feng Xiao wondered. That's what it means to be a fool, tortoise bastard. Lu Feng sighed and said, we can't leave him alone if we don't know each other in life. Take your time, it's the hardest thing in the world to get an account, or else no one will kneel down and beg for money back. What about tomorrow? I have my own way, let's rest first. After Lu Feng finished speaking, the phone on the table rang. Lu Feng walked over to unplug the phone line and said, go back to the room and sleep. Mr. Hao called again, but he couldn't get through. He was going crazy. He was also an old man. He didn't expect to be tricked by a stunner. The next day, early in the morning, Mr. Hao knocked on the door outside. Lu Feng opened the door to see him and said in surprise, Mr. Hao, are you all right? You scared me to death last night. I searched the police station all over the world. Go back and find you're gone. Mr. Hao was originally angrily wanting to ask something indiscriminate, but was blocked by Lu Feng's words. He entered the room, sat down and said, I asked you to come in yesterday, why did you go? I'm afraid, Lu Feng said with a lingering fear, I've never experienced this kind of situation. I was scared to death at the time. I'm really sorry. That's right, yesterday's consumption cost 20,000 yuan, and I settled the bill. President Hao directly reported the bill to Lu Feng. Mr. Hao, as long as you're fine, 20,000 yuan is a small matter. Now I mainly talk about my account. Lu Feng sat down, poured a glass of water for Mr. Hao, and said, didn't you tell me introduce people to get to know each other? Let's have a relationship. Let me settle last night's account first, Mr. Hao said bluntly to Lu Feng. I've got 18 million, can I send you 3 melons and 2 dates? These are all trivial matters. Lu Feng directly blocked it back. Mr. Hao is also helpless. This kid is so stupid, why can't he squeeze oil and water? Just say, how much money do you have now? Mr. Hao asked. My company really can't go on, or else I wouldn't ask for this account. When I came, I borrowed money to buy a plane ticket. Otherwise, how could 2 people come here? I'm really poor and I can't help it. Lu Feng cried. Poor road. Then what account do you want? I told you. If you owe 5 million, the account will have priority. Mr. Hao's face was full of impatience. I can borrow it? Right now, I just want to get to know the leaders of Beigong. If that's the case, I'll call and borrow 5 million, It's fine, Lu Feng assured. Mr. Hao sighed. It's so easy for others to squeeze money from these people who want accounts. How could he meet a poor ghost? He thought about it. Anyway, with 18 million under pressure, Lu Feng would definitely still be able to spend the money to catch big fish on a long line. He took a sip from the water glass on the table and said, "You can be smart, do you understand? I will arrange a dinner at noon and call the financial manager of Beigong. I will go to Jinfen's house to play in the evening, do you understand?" "I understand, but I don't have much money right now." Lu Feng showed embarrassment, and said embarrassedly, "Mr. Hao, can you give it a try? I'll definitely pay it back." "I'll give you money." "What are you thinking?" Mr. Hao called out. Good guy, he didn't pick up the wool himself, but was gnawed by the sheep instead. "It's an expedient measure. As long as the meal is finished, I will call immediately and mortgage the factory building. It's easy to get 5 million yuan, and then my brother will give you 1 million yuan. Lu Feng raised a finger and said. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 535. The current 1 million is an astronomical amount for an ordinary person. Although Mr. Hao is not an ordinary person, this amount of money also makes his head buzz. It took me a while to realize that what I wanted was 5 million, a mere 1 million. Brother also sees how good you are, so I'll help with this." "Thank you so much, bro, I'll never forget it, really, if I turn over, I'll repay you." Lu Feng grabbed the other's hand, showing his sincerity. "I'll greet you at noon." "Do you know," Mr. Hao stood up, thinking in his heart, "anyway, if you get the money, you should put some money in first, and then make a big sum of money." After sending Mr. Hao away, Lu Feng closed the door and sat on the sofa with a cold snort. Now the people from Beigong can't see him at all. He called before he came and transferred the debt problem to the real estate company, and the real estate company pushed it to Beigong. Steel. Otherwise, it is all kinds of materials, running back and forth. Lu Feng is very familiar with this kind of routine. After thinking about it last night, the probability of getting money directly is basically zero. The money has to be recovered in another way, and it must be found in a large local state-owned enterprise. We must not be afraid of Beigong, or else it will be a tripartite dispute. Lu Feng thought about it for a moment. The area of Liaoning that is not afraid of Beigong is Shenfei. It just so happened that Beigong and Shenfei had cooperation, and there were a lot of things that could be done here. Lu Feng sat there thinking for several hours, and wanted to contact Shenfei's general manager. After making a few calls, no one knew him. After thinking about it, I could only call Huang Youwei. "Hello, who is it?" Huang Youwei answered the phone and asked. "Mr. Huang, it's me, Lu Feng." "What's wrong with you?" Huang Youwei asked. "What kind of trouble can I cause? I'm a very well-behaved person." Lu Feng smiled naively. "What kind of trouble are you planning to cause?" "I just wanted to ask you, do you know Shenfei's general manager?" Lu Feng asked. "Let me tell you, steal, defraud a national fighter jet, and shoot it, understand?" Huang Youwei sneered. "Give you a fighter jet, and you won't be able to drive it. You're crazy for lack of money, and you start colluding with foreign forces. Can you stop teasing me? I really have something to do. I'm in Shenyang right now, and I want to get to know each other, have a meal, and ask for your help. The two of us don't talk about foreign affairs. We're here for a bill. Don't do this, we're not that familiar with each other, and we've been torn apart some time ago. Go to your hijiali, don't look for me," Huang Youwei said sourly. "It's okay to tear my face. I have two skins, One layer is torn, and one layer is left. Lu Feng said with a smile, please ask for help, it's really urgent, I know it, and most people certainly don't know it, only someone like you can come into contact with it. Huang Yowei laughed after being patted for a while, and promised to ask for help. When he was in metallurgical group, he dealt with these state-owned enterprises. At noon, he still ordered a table of meals in the private room on the third floor. Lu Feng changed his clothes and took Feng Xiao to the private room to wait in advance. In the office of the vice president of Beigong, when it was time to get off work, Mr. Hao knocked on the door, looked inside, smiled, stooped slightly, walked in and said, "Brother, are you busy?" Sitting in the seat was a man in his 50s, slightly fatter, wearing a pair of glasses, not tall, about 1.65 meters. He raised his head and stared at Mr. Hao, and said, "Is something wrong?" "Brother, I have a cigarette, I'll bring it to you." Mr. Hao took a Chinese cigarette from his arms, put it on the table, and said, "Brother, where do you have lunch?" "The cafeteria of the unit." "Just say something," the other party said without raising his head. "The company in the south, who made the TV, has the boss here." Mr. Hao turned his head and glanced at it, then stepped forward and closed the door. "What are you closing the door for?" The man raised his head and said, "If you want to pay, you need to pay. Just tell him that you have to go through the procedure, and if you have money, you will be called." "No, there is oil and water in this matter." Mr. Hao came over and lowered his voice, with a mysterious expression on his face. "Mr. Xiao, the boss of this company is so humming young, he's in his 20s, a fool, I'm playing with him." The rounds and turns. Mr. Hao briefly explained the matter, especially the description of Lu Feng, who was like a second fool with a lot of money in his hand and ready to give it to anyone at any time. Jiafeng Electronics? It sounds familiar. Mr. Xiao always felt that he had seen this company before, but couldn't remember, and said, "Let's have a meal then, it's okay. Don't worry, the money is absolutely stable. We'll be 2.5, I'll be 250. Mr. Hao suddenly felt something was wrong, squeezed out a smile and said, "You 300, I'm 200. Let's talk later, see you first, have a meal," Mr. Xiao said and closed the folder in front of him. President Xiao walked out of the office door and instructed the office next to him, "Go out for dinner, call a few people, and call that, Xiao Li." Lu Feng waited for almost half an hour, the waiter opened the door, and Mr. Hao walked in. Lu Feng hurriedly stood up and saw a group of 6 or 7 people behind him. There was a short man in the middle. After walking in, Mr. Hao introduced, "This is the Deputy General Manager of Beigong, who is in charge of finance, Mr. Xiao." "Hello, hello." Lu Feng bent down, stretched out his hand and shook it. "Mr. Lu is young and promising?" "Sit down." Mr. Xiao shook it casually and sat on the main seat. The others followed. Normally, Lu Feng would sit next to President Xiao. After all, he was the biggest guest at the scene, but a beautiful girl in her 20s sat next to him, and Lu Feng sat in the 4th seat. "Waiter, order," Mr. Hao greeted the waiter. "You order." Mr. Hao took the menu and handed it to Mr. Xiao. Mr. Xiao glanced at the menu, handed it to the girl next to him, and said, "Xiaoli, you just came to the unit, if there is anything you are not used to, tell me, don't treat me as an outsider. What you want to eat, order it." "Mr. Xiao, you take care of me too much." Xiaoli smiled awkwardly and ordered 2 dishes. During the whole process of ordering, Lu Feng didn't say a word. A group of people sat there and chatted about the work in the work unit. Otherwise, Mr. Xiao had played mahjong well a few days ago. As the food came and the wine came, Mr. Hao patted Lu Feng without saying a word, and said in a low voice, "Be smart and have a glass." Lu Feng picked up the wine glass, looking a little stiff, stood up and looked at President Xiao and Xiaoli, and said, "I'm not very good at speaking. I'll toast the 2 of you." That one, has a precious son early. What nonsense are you talking about? Xylee blushed, bowing her head and pretending to be this kid. Mr. Xiao was full of smiles instead, and the scene was also bursting with laughter. Lu Feng drank a glass of wine, sat down and said, Mr. Xiao, we are a small company. You ordered a batch of TV sets last year. The money hasn't arrived yet, it's New Year's Eve. Mr. Xiao raised his head abruptly, looked at Mr. Hao, and asked, I haven't paid for the TV set for the resettlement house last year. Ah, Mr. Hao was also stunned, and hurriedly said, that money is still in the process. Didn't the last meeting say that debts over 20 million are given priority? He is 18 million, and there is a line in front of him. Is that so? Mr. Xiao pondered for a while and said, Xiao Lu, I'm not embarrassing you, this is really troublesome, and we will discuss it later, but you can rest assured that this money will be given to you. I don't worry about your words. The vice president of my company came to ask for money, but I was told that the account was paid out and I was asked to go to another place. I had no choice but to come here by myself. Lu Feng was very embarrassed. Said, I'm also anxious, this is not a small amount. The matter of transferring accounts is indeed true. If you can't get the money back, we also won't be able to get it back. It's up to the account, whose account should be moved away. I have the final say on this matter. If you're mean, I don't. It's your fault, President Xiao said. Thank you, Mr. Xiao. Mr. Hao pointed aside. Thank you, Mr. Xiao. This kid is young and doesn't understand anything, so he has to start a company. Mr. Hao teased. Feng Xiao was eating the whole time. He didn't like such occasions very much. Everyone had smiles on their faces, and they were talking nonsense. He also knew that Brother Feng was in vain. Mr. Hao leaned against Lu Feng's ear and whispered, I have already told Mr. Xiao that they will take care of you because of your young age, and they agreed to take care of you. 5 million will be paid quickly. 20 million, you can do it in advance, understand? I have a problem now, the board of directors doesn't believe me. Lu Feng explained in a low voice, the vice president said before that the account was paid out, and now I say again, I can pay it back here. People don't believe it, can I? Let Beigong issue a bill, not the TV bill, but the stainless steel bill. It's all the same, it's all accounts, so it's still troublesome. No, if it is the account of the TV, the board of directors will think that the account will be transferred to other companies. I mean to make a detour and replace it with the account of steel raw materials. I also have a statement, after all, it is mortgage factory, it's a big deal. Mr. Hao sighed and felt that there were too many things about this person. He sat up straight, raised his wine glass and toasted Mr. Xiao before mentioning this matter. Why are there so many things? Mr. Xiao was a little dissatisfied. Mr. Hao walked over, stood beside him, and said in a low voice, people are also worried. This is normal. I used to pay the bills to other companies to ask for bills. Okay, come to my office this afternoon, and I'll make an order for you. Mr. Xiao looked at Lu Feng and smiled and said, we're all good at talking. If we can do it for you, I'll definitely do it for you. Thank you. Thank you. Lu Feng hurriedly became polite. Lu Feng's heart was put in his stomach. He was worried that the other party would think too much, but he didn't expect it to be so relaxed. After thinking about it carefully, it was true that he was holding 18 million there, and he was still trying to figure it out. Pit yourself for another 5 million. Isn't it just a green light all the way? Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 536. The atmosphere at the scene didn't need to be driven by Lu Feng at all. Those who could come to eat were all smart people. You don't need to ask, you know that they are the most influential people in the unit and the sycophants of the leaders. It was past 3 o'clock in the afternoon after a meal, and Mr. Xiao was very happy. He took Xiaoli's hand with a smile on his face. The group went downstairs. Mr. Hao, I don't have enough money in my pocket. You're not enough for one meal, Hao glared at Lu Feng. He had never seen anything like this before, and said in a low voice, you don't have money on your body, so what are you doing out there? Going out to do errands, isn't that bullshit? Brother, I really don't have a plan. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come all the way to ask for money. This time I originally planned to build a floor shop at the gate of Beigong. It's not easy to get an account. I didn't expect you to have a plan. Lu Feng took Mr. Hao's hand and said, brother, dear brother, I will pay back the 5 million once I arrive, and I will pay it back in double immediately. It's impossible to lose my brother. Mr. Xiao is still standing there. Isn't this a slap in the face of the leader? Mr. Hao was also forced to be helpless, so he could only say, get me the money as soon as possible. I just see you as a young man, so I can help you and sign the bill for you. Thank you, brother, I will definitely repay you, Lu Feng said politely, I have nothing to forget, you are a good person. Mr. Xiao took out a pen from his pocket, walked to the front desk to sign the form, left the hotel door, and was about to go to the work unit. When Lu Feng saw Feng Xiao follow him, he waved his hand to let him go back. When he arrived at Beigong's building, Lu Feng followed him upstairs. Mr. Xiao was still very good in it, and there were many people who greeted him politely along the way. After entering the office, the other party sat in his seat and stared at Lu Feng. Lu Feng put his two hands in front of him and clasped them tightly together. He was extremely restrained and looked like he had never seen the world. Mr. Xiao smiled and pointed to the chair in front of him and said, sit down, don't. Nervous, you are also a businessman and a boss. I can't compare with you, I'm a private company. Lu Feng sat down. That's incomparable, private enterprises are also called enterprises, Mr. Xiao snorted, obviously looking down on private enterprises, lit a cigarette and said, young man, let me tell you this, rich is worse than power, I understand. Don't know. I don't understand very well, Lu Feng shook his head quickly, holding the other person in his arms and said, what you said is too profound. At first glance, it seems that you have little qualifications, so I will ask you one thing. Has anyone brought money, invited you to dinner, or even knelt on the ground and kowtowed? Mr. Xiao raised his head and looked at Lu Fengman has a condescending attitude. How is this possible? I was recruiting people all the year round, and I had to ask for workers when I was busy, Lu Feng replied. This is the gap, you don't have to worry about not paying you back. Who is behind this state-owned enterprise? Mr. Xiao was a little drunk, took a cigarette, and the smoke shrouded in front of him. That's what I thought at the time, that's why I owe money on credit. Small businesses can't handle it, Lu Feng said with a bitter expression. I always feel like I've heard about your company somewhere, it doesn't feel like a small business, I can't remember it. Seeing that you are a child, I'm not difficult for you. What should I say? Xiao Hao told you, do you understand? Mr. Xiao asked. Understood, as long as the board of directors agrees, everything can be said, Lu Feng nodded. Young people still need more experience, don't be so dumb, know how to wink, you will suffer a big loss sooner or later. Mr. Xiao began to educate him as an elder. As he spoke, he opened the drawer, took out a standard contract, put it on the table and asked, can this be done in 3 or 5 days? I'll try my best. Lu Feng looked at the contract and said, Mr. Xiao, is this contract the account of the TV set and the account of the raw materials? Yes, isn't that what you want? President Xiao raised his head and asked. I'm really afraid of accidents, can you write it down? This account can be directly exchanged for steel, there is no other meaning, that is to say, in order to appease the board members, I have already made progress here, Lu Feng tentatively asked. This can't be done. The account can only be an account. Once you write down the corresponding grade of steel, it will cause a big problem. I have already given you face. President Xiao looked at Lu Feng vigilantly. Don't think about it, it's not written in the terms of the contract, you can just write a line below with a pen. I'm showing it to the board of directors. Besides, even if I want to exchange it for steel, I have to buy it from you. Isn't it in your palm? Lu Feng thought for him. President Xiao hiccuped, expecting that a young man like Lu Feng couldn't do anything. He was like a big mountain in front of Lu Feng, and he could see through this young man at a glance. No matter what the other party thinks, he is like a monkey in front of him. 5 million, hurry up. Mr. Xiao picked up the pen and wrote a line below, saying, the account of this contract can be exchanged for Beigong products, then picked up the seal and started to seal, and asked, the original, what about the account? Lu Feng handed over the original bills and receipts in a mess. After the other party confirmed that they were correct, he shredded them and threw them into the trash can. He threw the contract in front of Lu Feng and said, okay. Thank you, Mr. Xiao. Mr. Hao said that he treated guests at night. Jinfen family, I hope you can show your face, Lu Feng said politely. No problem, Mr. Xiao agreed happily. As for who treats guests, they don't care at all. After leaving Beigong's gate, Lu Feng looked at the contract in his hand and breathed a sigh of relief. It didn't take much effort to get it. To pay for such a thing, you still have to rely on your brain. How is it? Is it done? Mr. Hao came over and asked. With your brother here, what can't you do? Lu Feng grinned at him and said, Mr. Xiao said, go to Jinfen's house at night. These are all trivial matters. People generally don't go there. Take advantage of the opportunity. Also, hurry up with the $5 million. If another big account comes in, it will be delayed again, Mr. Hao reminded. I know, don't worry, there's one more thing. I went to Jinfen's house tonight to play. I said I would ask, but Mr. Xiao wouldn't let him. Mr. Xiao said he would let you perform. Let me perform, Mr. Hao called out. Why does he always spend his own money? Yes, I'm also wondering, why don't you ask President Xiao what's going on? Lu Feng said with a puzzled face. How dare Mr. Hao ask? There is no way to ask such a thing. Mr. Hao glanced at Lu Feng. He always felt that this stupid young man didn't look like a good thing. In that case, you give me 20,000 yuan, and I will treat you at night, Mr. Hao said to Lu Feng. Brother, this is the only one left for me to be poor now. Lu Feng pushed the contract in front of him, wondering, you give me the pad first, and then it will be counted for one piece. My brother has specified that I can't lose you. How much do you have on you? Mr. Hao said helplessly. Look at you, don't believe me, Lu Feng waved his hand and said, I've been bored enough these days. I'll keep my mouth shut, I don't want the money anymore, let's see you again. You still owe me money, Mr. Hao hurriedly chased after him. Could this make him run away? It's not that I didn't pay you back, Beigong owes me the money, my 18 million has arrived, and I'm still short of your 3 melons and 2 dates, I would never deal with people, I eat and sing. Lu Feng looked at him and said confidently, brother, am I the kind of person who doesn't pay back? Mr. Hao's chest was congested, and he always felt that something was wrong. Originally, Lu Feng was nodding to him, but Lu Feng wanted the account. He was grandfather. Whether I can get 18 million has nothing to do with Mr. Hao's half a cent, but the money he spent recently is all his personal money. Don't be impulsive, young people, they have come this far, because of this little money. It's not about the money, it's about the useless. Lu Feng interrupted him. Young people, don't be so irritable, it's all right, brother, check out the bill at night, go back and discuss with the board of directors and call the 5 million as soon as possible. Mr. Hao persuaded Lu Feng reluctantly to agree and move in the direction of the hotel walk. Mr. Hao watched him walk away, stood there, and scolded, what the hell is this bullshit? If it wasn't for the sake of 5 million, I would have hummed you earlier. Back at the hotel, before entering the room door, Feng Xiao opened the door and said, "Brother Feng, Secretary Kui called and left a phone number, saying that it was Mr. Tang's phone number." "Okay, I see." Lu Feng pushed open the door and walked in. There was a piece of paper on the table with a phone number written on it. Lu Feng put the contract in place, called according to the number on it, and picked it up after a few rings. "Hello, General Manager Shen Fei's office, who are you looking for?" A telephone operator's voice was on the opposite side. Lu Feng felt that if he reported his family name, the other side would definitely not transfer it. He could not tell how many people would call him every day. A bit. "Which institute? If it's a technology-related issue, please come through the organization's introduction, bring a letter of introduction, and we'll make an appointment for you." Then hung up the phone. Lu Feng scratched his head anxiously, thought for a moment, and called again. There was still this very formal accent. Lu Feng said, "Hello, I'm a staff member of the embassy, I hope I can." "Sir, is it fun?" The other end of the phone directly interrupted Lu Feng's speech. "I just want to find Mr. Tang, do. Hang up again. Lu Feng knew that for a state-owned enterprise of this level, it wouldn't work for ordinary people to rely on a few words or two. "What business are you talking about? Buy a few fighter jets to play?" Lu Feng really has nothing to do. As long as any company is greedy for profit, there will be a breakthrough, but this company does not seek profit. "Let's call Lao Huang." Lu Feng called Huang Youwei. Huang Youwei picked up the phone and heard that it was Lu Feng, with a smile on his face. He had long thought that Lu Feng would call him. Lu Feng could fool ordinary people, and there were ordinary people in there. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 537. "Isn't the phone number already given to you? What are you going to do?" Huang Youwei said in a calm manner, with a bit of teasing in his words. "I called and they didn't transfer it," Lu Feng said with a wry smile. "How talented you are, cheating, you just say you are from the research institute." I said, "People want a letter of introduction, please stop scolding me, can you give me a direct phone number to his office, or at home?" Lu Feng asked with a smile. "Look, at a critical time, you know who treats you well, right?" Yes, without you, I would not be where I am today. Only by your side can I feel the call of wisdom. To this day, I've only done some trivial work." Stop, the smell of flattery is too strong. "I'll give you the phone number, don't say I gave it, you remember the number." After Lu Feng wrote down the number, he boasted for a while, then hung up the phone, picked up the phone and called again. In the general manager's office, there are 3 red telephones on the table, one for internal calls, one for transfer, and one for direct access to the general manager. Jingle, the phone rang. A middle-aged man with a Chinese character face, his face is full of sternness, giving people a feeling of not anger and self-righteousness. He picked up the phone and said, "Hello, General Manager Shen Fei's office, I'm Tang Gan." "Mr. Tang, well, I'm the chairman of GFN Electronics." "Lu Feng, don't hang up, I have something to tell you." Lu Feng hurriedly identified himself. "GFN Electronics? Which company?" the other party asked. "It's from Jiangsu. There is such a thing. I have a batch of Beigong's indicators on hand. I can transfer it at a low price. There is no problem with the steel. Go to Beigong to get the goods directly, and I can get 1 or 2 million cheaper." Lu Feng said it very directly, because he knew that if he fooled himself a little, the other side might hang up. "Steel is coordinated between our companies. No third party is allowed to intervene in this matter." "Where did you ask for my phone number?" Mr. Tang asked. "I got it from an old friend. It's like this. I don't mean to intervene, but these steel companies generally don't use it. My money is still there, so it can be cheaper, Lu Feng explained. Oh, who called you? Asked the other side. Lu Feng already understood. I have something to do. I'll be busy first, and then contact me. The other side hung up the phone. Lu Feng put down the phone and sighed. There are some things that are still not easy to handle, and it seems that they have to slowly grind. The night here came earlier than in the south. It was already groggy outside at 6 o'clock. Lu Feng called Zhang Xiaoyan and asked about the family. On track, sales began to stabilize. First, it was because Zhang Fengxia gave many orders, and some holiday gifts sent by the factory to the management were basically cosmetics. Second, it was because the factory had been open for a period of time, and the most difficult days had passed. Open the market. The factory's business is booming, and Zhang Xiaoyan is also more confident. On the phone, he said that he was reading a book on business recently, and he had a lot of understanding of the operation of the small factory, interpersonal relationships, sales, and product positioning. When she was about to hang up the phone, Zhang Xiaoyan returned to her old way. She asked Lu Feng to eat on time and drink more water. It was cold here, so wear more clothes. She was looking at the weather forecast in Liaoning these days, and she said that it was a cold spring. Come on, a cold snap, don't catch a cold. Listening to the chatter on the phone, Lu Feng said he understood, hung up the phone, his face still filled with a smile, and Feng Xiao's voice sounded outside the door. Brother Feng, Mr. Hao is here. When he opened the door, Lu Feng saw when he arrived at Feng Xiao, he asked, where are the others? In the lobby, they said they were going to karaoke. Feng Xiao looked at Lu Feng and said, Brother Feng, I won't go there, I'm not very suitable for that kind of occasion. Okay, you stay in the hotel, call your dad and talk more, he can't help worrying about people out of town. Lu Feng patted him on the shoulder, took his coat, and walked downstairs. Going downstairs, Mr. Hao was already waiting in the lobby, and when he saw Lu Feng coming, he stood up and sorted his clothes, and said, let's think about it and make arrangements. Mr. Xiao will go after he's done. Don't worry, I will arrange you first. I understand, Yanmer, it must be Yanmer, Lu Feng said towards him. Mr. Hao grinned, looked at Lu Feng and said, you're not that stupid, you have a future. Have you called your board members? Brother, don't worry about this, I've already called and sent the new debt contract by fax in the afternoon. Isn't today a Saturday? The bank doesn't go to work. Besides, it has to be a matter of course. Next Friday will definitely be the case. It is good. Lu Feng assured. Mr. Hao patted Lu Feng's back, stopped a car, and went straight to Jinfen's house. There are not many people here, but the place here is difficult to determine, and many come early, and the cars at the door are blocked. Now, Lu Feng and the others parked a BMW sports car in front of the car, and a woman walked down, who looked to be in her 30s. She was dressed in a particularly temperamental fashion, dressed in white velvet casual clothes, with high heels on her feet and her hands on her hands. He was holding a lady's cigarette, and a black trench coat was draped over his shoulders, just like a big sister. Help me park the car. The woman handed over the key and gave it with the key, as well as a 100 yuan bill. The security guard hurriedly bowed and said, thank you, Sister Yu. Lang Biao and the lobby manager Xiao Jing also came out last night and asked with a smile, Sister Yu is here, everything has been arranged for you. Lu Feng watched Sister Yu walk in and asked, what character? It feels great. The people who come here to play are all rich people. How many simple ones are there? The taxi driver said something casually. After saying this, he felt that it was not quite right. Sure enough, Mr. Hao looked at him with a displeased expression. I don't know, it must be from a large unit. Mr. Hao pushed open the car door and said, get out of the car and walk over. Lu Feng asked the driver, how much is it? $3 is fine. I didn't mean that you didn't have a car. Just explain it to the leader. I didn't mean that, the driver hurriedly said to Lu Feng. You don't need to worry about him, that kind of mental retardation can't explain the explanation, so I'll give you 5 yuan. Lu Feng got out of the car. The driver sat there and looked at the $5. For a while, he didn't know what the relationship between the two was. Without thinking about it, he stepped on the accelerator and hurried away. Mr. Hao was chatting with another foreman in the lobby. I decided to book a better private room. After a while, the lobby manager came out and saw Mr. Hao coming again, with a smile on his face, and said politely, Mr. Hao, you are here. I'm really sorry yesterday. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. When I come to spend, you will greet you with a smile. If something goes wrong, you will go out. If it wasn't for a treat, I really don't want to come. Mr. Hao snorted coldly. It's because we didn't do it properly. Today, I'll call the shots and send you 2 bottles of foreign wine. Also, the girl from last night has not been decided yet. Don't worry, it's all arranged. The lobby manager is extraordinarily good at handling things. Lang Biao was also talking on the side. It was the private room from yesterday. The lobby manager led people into it, and Lu Feng followed behind, walking with Lang Biao. What's your name? Lu Feng asked towards him. To save face on the road, I call you Brother Wolf. You can do whatever you want. Lang Biao said politely. Brother Lang, who is the woman who entered in front of you? Lu Feng inquired. Sister Yu is not an ordinary person, she often comes here to spend, Lang Biao said with a mysterious face. What's the background? Lang Biao leaned against Lu Feng and whispered, Boss lover, understand? I heard that it is still a large-scale enterprise, and it is related to the aircraft, so I can't say it anymore. The last name is Tang. Tisk. Lang Biao slapped his mouth and said, the surname is Zhao, and he should be the third in command. Understood. Lu Feng felt that his opportunity was coming. Isn't this a pillow for drowsiness? When he walked to the door of the private room, he asked in a low voice, which private room is she? It's diagonally opposite, Tianyu Cave. Lang Biao pointed to a private room diagonally across from him. When he entered the private room, it was the same as yesterday. He didn't drink beer at all, it was all foreign wine. Lu Feng sat there absent-mindedly. After waiting for more than an hour, Hao always sitting there and talking to Lu Feng about all kinds of things in the arena, bragging about how arrogant he was back then and who was the leader of this dinner party. Lu Feng sat on the side and just nodded. He blew it for more than an hour, and his mouth was full of water. Without drinking, Mr. Xiao finally arrived. A group of people went out to welcome Mr. Xiao in. When they passed by the private room of Tianyu Cave, they heard that the inside was already lively, and the voice should be a group of women. After Mr. Xiao sat down, Hao the total commanded to the lobby manager, go to the little sister. A row of girls walked in. President Xiao's face changed, and he shouted, what are you talking about? Come out and sing karaoke and make you mad, what is this for? Mr. Hao was stunned for a moment, and the whole person was at a loss. Obviously, he has never experienced such a magical thing. If you want to come, you still have to scold me? Lu Feng sat on the side and smiled without saying a word. I tell you, Xiao Hao, you need to be upright, you can come out and play. What are you doing with these bells and whistles? Don't you feel dirty? I tell you, I've never done anything like this in my life, you make me sick. Mr. Xiao scolded righteously. I really don't know, you, get out, all out. Mr. Hao started to drive people. When Lu Feng saw that he was about to drive people, he secretly screamed, broken, and hurriedly said, it costs money, how can we not? I know that Mr. Xiao is upright, but I am shameless. What do you know? Didn't you see Mr. Xiao getting angry? Mr. Hao said to the lobby manager, get out. I like it, can't go. Lu Feng didn't let them go. Since all the money has been spent, Xiao Lu is young. If he likes this, he can stay. He is a guest. Mr. Xiao's voice softened a lot. Lu Feng secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, Mr. Hao boasted to him how well informed he was, and he almost screwed it up. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 538. Last night, because of the fight with that foreign girl, she walked in today and said thank you twice in a few broken Chinese, which made Mr. Hao's heart flutter. Although the words are incomprehensible, but the eyes are showing affection. In addition to taking care of Mr. Xiao, Mr. Hao is drinking with her. It can be seen that he really likes it. There are various exciting mini-games on the spot. Even if Lu Ziyi comes, he will definitely not be able to resist for long under the stimulation of alcohol at home. After almost drinking, Mr. Xiao stood up and showed his singing voice. Lu Feng clapped his hands and said to Mr. Hao next to him, I'll go to the toilet, you take care of Mr. Xiao. Go. Mr. Hao didn't even look at Lu Feng glanced at him and hugged the foreign girl next to him, his eyes almost popping out. After leaving the private room, Lu Feng stopped for a few seconds as he passed Tianyu Cave, walked towards the bathroom, went to the toilet, and stood in front of the sink looking at himself in the mirror. Turn on the faucet, pour cold water on his face, tear open the collar of his clothes, and brush his hair with his hand. At this time, Lu Feng is slightly drunk, with water droplets on his face, and his eyes are slightly narrowed, with a bit of confusion. Lu Feng is definitely not super handsome, but he has a unique charm. If Zhang Fengxia was here at this moment, he would definitely be unbearable when he looked at him. Feeling about the same, Lu Feng walked back and walked to the door of the private room in Tianyu Cave. He pushed the private room door open, staggered and rushed in, shouting, "Hey, get up!" The colorful lights flickered, 7 or 8 women twisted their bodies, and as Lu Feng rushed in, they screamed under the stimulation of alcohol. A group of people twisted for a while, almost venting, before they realized that a stranger broke in, turned on the lights, and looked at Lu Feng. Standing there, Lu Feng was a little unsteady. As the lights came on, he glanced at the scene, stared at Sister Yu, and stepped forward and hugged him directly. "Why haven't we seen you for a while? Change. Another batch." You." Sister Yu pushed Lu Feng directly out and asked, "Who are you? Run us." "The private room is coming." Lu Feng was pushed and sat on the sofa, as if awake from a dream. He hurriedly stood up, put his hands together, and apologized, "I'm sorry, I drank a bit too much and went to the wrong private room." "Which private room do you belong to?" a woman in her 30s asked. I should be here. I came out and turned around," Lu Feng said with a smile. "Come here to play," you just twisted quite arrogantly. Lu Feng scratched his head and said a little embarrassedly, I can't jump, I'll give you a cup of beauties." Lu Feng picked up a cup from the table, poured himself a cup, and drank it. Sister Yu looked at him and asked, "Aren't you a local?" "I opened in the south. The company, I came here to ask for an account. I don't know much about drinking, and I was given a little too much," Lu Feng said sincerely to her. "I just saw you come in when I came. It's so beautiful, it's amazing." A group of people, the women, laughed, and one of them dressed up angrily and said, "Sister Yu, I'm here for you." "No, I really went wrong." "Who owes you a debt?" Sister Yu asked. "Beijing Iron and Steel. I have the account in my hand now, and I can't come out. I want to find someone to take over, but no one dares to take it. I don't have the money to take a batch of steel, but no one wants it. Now I think about it, even if I lose a few million, as long as I can exchange it out," Lu Feng said with a bitter expression. "Steal from Beijing? Lost a few million? Meeting is fate, sit down, sister. You greeted the other sisters. She was also a little tired from jumping around. I didn't call anyone tonight, and a group of women was actually meaningless. Lu Feng sat down, and a sister next to him put a bottle of foreign wine in front of him. Sister Yu lit a cigarette, took a mouthful of the fruit plate and asked, "How much do I owe you?" 21 million, Lu Feng replied. So much money? I didn't see it. You are really rich at a young age. Is it your own company? Sister Yu stared at Lu Feng in disbelief. My company, which was established in the south, makes TV sets. You said that you are willing to sell even if you lose several million, Sister Yu asked after taking a cigarette. I'm here because it doesn't matter if I'm in a relationship, but if I don't have connections, I've been tossed around during this time. There are too many leaders. After spending time with this and that, spending money is like a bottomless pit. Lu Feng turned on the spit mode. Talk about your misery. Talking about these things with fuel and jealousy is like grabbing a stranger and complaining fiercely, while talking, drinking half a bottle of foreign wine. Sister Yu nodded secretly, smoking a cigarette, and asked, "Then how much are you going to pay?" I don't think about it anymore. When I first came, I thought about coming back. Now I don't dare to think about it. It's ahead, as long as it can be realized, 18 million is recognized. There are still holes in the company that need to be plugged. That is to tell you, I don't dare to tell the executives now, and I don't dare to tell my family, for fear that the company will fall apart. It's gone. What Lu Feng said was a miserable one. There are 3 million profits in it. It's fate that we met. I have to go back. You guys have fun. Lu Feng stood up and made an apologetic gesture to everyone, ready to go out. When he reached the door, he stretched out his hand to open the door, glanced back slightly, opened the door a bit slower, opened the door and was about to leave, but the other party didn't move. Step out. Wait a minute. Huh? Lu Feng turned around and said blankly, "Is something wrong?" Sister Yu took her bag, took out a business card from it, and handed it to Lu Feng. Meeting is fate, tomorrow morning. Call me, I might be able to help you solve it. Really? Lu Feng took the business card, and he was overjoyed and said, "Thank you, Sister Yu." "You're welcome, it's fate to meet you, you can go back," Lu Feng said politely, closed the door, put the business card in his pocket, turned around and met Lang Biao, who was standing in the corridor looking at Lu Feng. "You scared me," Lu Feng gasped. "What are you doing in Sister Runyu's private room?" Lang Biao said with an intriguing smile on his face. "Boy, let me remind you that dumplings and sister-in-law are clearly distinguished. Hot dumplings burn her mouth, and sister-in-law breaks her leg." "What? I just went to the wrong private room," Lu Feng explained. "As soon as you came in today, I saw that you were snarky, and I found out that Sister Yu is called a diligent. I know you are not a local, don't make trouble. It seems to remind you that this river and lake is not only about love between children, but also most of the heroes are short-tempered." Lang Biao patted Lu Feng's shoulder heavily with his hand. "Shouldn't you be in the lobby?" Lu Feng asked. "Someone is fighting, let me stop it." Lang Biao patted his chest and said, "Here, I am the owner of the shop. There is no one who I am injustice, the embodiment of justice, the messenger of peace." "Okay." Lu Feng found that he was very chatty, hurriedly stopped him from continuing to talk, and walked towards the private room. It was already in the second half of the private room. The scene was indescribable. Mr. Xiao also drank a little too much. Lu Feng went in for a few drinks, pushed the girls away, and it was lively for more than half an hour. Mr. Xiao was carried by the three girls to the hotel to rest, and Mr. Hao also hugged the foreign girl and walked out. The remaining few robbed Lu Feng and wanted him to take him away. Lu Feng couldn't afford it, so he gave them 50 yuan and sent them away. Mr. Hao went to the front desk to settle the bill and said hello to Lu Feng. Before he left, he did not forget about the 5 million, and gave the order again. At 11 o'clock in the evening, Lu Feng got in the car and drove back. In the hotel, Feng Xiao was sitting on a chair, the phone was on the speakerphone, and Mr. Feng's voice came from the other end. What your eldest brother means is that with this little family business, if anyone has the ability, he will take it away. If you can't, don't blame anyone. Even if you give it, you won't be able to keep it in the end. Your second brother has ambitions. It's done very well in Singapore. According to people's words, no matter who owns Sun Hung Kai in the future, people will eat it. Big brother and second brother are right. In the end, it depends on ability, just like Lu Feng. My parents didn't give anything. Feng Xiao sighed and said, when I lived in a block, my aunt often said that you favored me. In the past half a year, I have already felt that I invested this amount of money in Lu Feng. It's a good deal, even if it's a loss, it's worth it. How many years can I last? You are the youngest, I'm afraid you won't be able to compete with the big brother and the second brother. Mr. Feng's voice was full of worry. Dad, when I first graduated, I always felt that I understood everything in the world, as if I was omnipotent, but following Lu Feng, he showed me a more real world. Anyway, I never dared to dream that a big boss can lie under the wheel of the mayor's car, the kind of scenery and face that ordinary people look up to, and he doesn't seem to care. Feng Xiao sighed. He is a very pure person, Mr. Feng commented. It's just shameless. Feng Xiao couldn't help laughing and said, Dad, if you replace me with Lu Feng, are you still worried? Mr. Feng on the other end of the phone laughed, then he should be worried. Son and second son. Wealthy families have their own difficulties, just follow him, see more, and learn more. Mr. Feng was silent for a while and said, as far as I know, some people have been doing something to Chen Capital recently, and the stock price is very high. Unstable. You didn't listen to what Lu Feng said. This, I really didn't hear it. It's time to rest, you should rest earlier, you're not busy, remember to come back and see me, Mr. Feng ordered. Got it, Dad. After hanging up the phone, Feng Xiao was half lying on the sofa, recalling the days when he knew Lu Feng. He seemed to have changed from a person floating in the air to a down-to-earth person, which was extraordinarily real. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 539. Feng Xiao is of course himself. His father loves his younger son and prefers himself. There are 3 brothers and 3 mothers behind them. Both the eldest and the second have their own careers. He is the only one who has just graduated and has no place to stand. As for Mr. Feng, he is very old. He has to stay in the hospital for half a year, and no one knows how long he can last. For Mr. Feng, the palms of the hands and the backs of the hands are full of flesh, and he also understands that the son of a wealthy family is not so easy to handle, not to mention that Feng Xiao is a character who does not dare to be left behind. At 12 o'clock in the evening, in the middle of the night, Sister Yu returned to the Xiaoyang building full of alcohol, poured herself a glass of water, and sat there full of what Lu Feng had said. This matter lingered in her heart. The house was rented, and the car was also a water wheel. She didn't have much money in her hand, but she just went out and dressed up nicely and had a strong aura, giving people a kind of rich lady. Just the feeling. The phone on the table rang, and Sister Yu answered the phone and said, "Who is it?" "It's in the middle of the night." I'll go to your place tonight." A rough man's voice came from the other end of the phone, as if with a hint of drunk. He said, "Pick up the bed and wait." "I just have something to tell you. Have you been drinking?" Sister Yu asked. "Just finished playing, don't ask so much." After that, he hung up the phone. Sister Yu stood up and started changing clothes. Half an hour later, a car stopped at the door, and a short, stout man walked down. He was in his 40s, with rosacea and a big belly. He looked a little ugly. He pushed him away. "Door upstairs." After another 10 minutes, it was almost a little bit. Sister Yu leaned on the head of the bed, lit a cigarette, pushed it towards the man next to her, and said coquettishly, "Mr. Zhao, don't sleep, I have something to do with you." "Say it." "If you have something to say tomorrow, turn off the lights and go to bed," Mr. Zhao said impatiently. "You leave early tomorrow morning." "I met someone today, the boss from the south, who asked Beigong for an account, called Mr. Xiao out, and found a lot of young girls." "How difficult is it to get an account now?" "He has an account of 21 million, which can be converted into steel, and he is willing to ask for 3 million less." "Oh, did you listen to what they said?" "Listen, now there are more accounts, don't you? It's raining when you hear the wind. What kind of unit are we? We can't move blindly. If there's a little bit of trouble, then we'll go in, understand? Don't sleep, I followed you for so long, and I didn't get anything. Anyway, you are also cooperating with Beigong. His money has become a public-to-public account, and it has nothing to do with us personally, and we have not violated anything. Take a share in the middle." Sister Yu took his arm and said, "What can I do with you? Aya, are you not happy? You are not happy to pull it down, don't disturb my sleep." Mr. Zhao was a little annoyed and turned over to wrap himself up, continue to sleep under the quilt. Sister Yu sighed, knowing in her heart that she should have said more than 10 minutes ago that he would definitely agree. Damn, it's a mistake. The next morning, Mr. Zhao obediently agreed, and it was his responsibility. At 9 o'clock in the morning, after washing up, Lu Feng checked the time, picked up the business card in his hand and called Sister Yu. "Who is it?" Sister Yu's voice was a bit pretentious. "Sister Yu, it's me. I went to the wrong box yesterday." "Didn't I want to call you in the morning?" Lu Feng asked. Hearing that it was Lu Feng on the other end of the phone, his voice hurriedly became serious and said, "I've already found someone for this matter, it's not easy to handle, can you let it go a little more?" "Sister Yu, I really can't let it go any more, 3 million is not much, I have already made a loss in this transaction, and now I am doing it at a loss." Lu Feng began to vomit bitterly, but he did not say too much, just said that if things happen, it can be done. "Give Sister Yu a big red envelope of 100,000 or 200,000. The two of us are also destined to help you with this matter. Let's go out for dinner tonight, and you can bring your bill, okay?" "No problem, I'll treat you." After hanging up the phone, Lu Feng whispered, "There is a drama in this matter, I took out the contract and ran into Feng Xiao as soon as I went out." "Brother Feng, what are you doing?" Feng Xiao asked. "Get a fake contract, you stay in the room and I'll handle it." Lu Feng waved his hand. "Fake? It's gotta study hard." "I'm going to," Feng Xiao hurriedly followed. "I found a print shop in the city." According to this contract, Lu Feng made another 3 million yuan and stamped it with a fake seal. If it was a serious transaction, it would be contract fraud. The key is that Lu Feng was crushed to death, Sister Yu didn't dare to do anything, and the people behind him didn't dare to speak up. 18 million in goods and 18 million in money were a lot. After finishing this, he found a bag and packed it up. Feng Xiao watched him so cautiously and said, "Brother Feng, just take it back, there's no need for that. A lot of things are lost in the details, so be sure to be foolproof." Lu Feng picked up the bag and took a taxi to go back. As soon as he returned to the hotel, Mr. Hao was waiting in the lobby. When he saw Lu Feng again, he was very excited. When he came, he found that the two were gone, and Mr. Hao's heart immediately came to his throat. "I was thinking in my heart, these two grandsons will not run away, right?" "Where are you going?" Mr. Hao greeted him, stared at the bag in Lu Feng's hand and asked, "What is it?" "I went out and bought a few pairs of socks, but I forgot to bring them when I came." Lu Feng smiled. He asked, "Is President Xiao satisfied last night?" "Satisfied, when will your money be available?" President Hao asked. I came back last night and called overnight. No problem. I'm already going to the bank. Mr. Hao, you really helped me a lot. Lu Feng took his hand excitedly and said, if you have time to go to the south, my brother will give you a grand reception. Don't worry. I have something to tell you. Mr. Hao pulled Lu Feng aside and said in a low voice, that's right, your account was originally from the real estate company, so the latter account, let's go from the real estate company. After the money comes in, you can call me on the account. Brother, I am also a little capable. I will manage the relationship and save you a dozen or 200,000. No problem. Really? Lu Feng looked at his eyes flashed, and he hurriedly said, brother, you are so kind to me, think of a way to save me money, I will take half of this money, thank you brother. Mr. Hao originally prepared several sets of words, but he didn't expect Lu Feng to believe it so easily. He secretly thought that he was still a young man, and he didn't have much social experience, so he easily trusted others. After being polite for a while, we had a meal together at noon. Mr. Hao was very showy, and he brought out his own affairs at the dinner table. Lu Feng watched him and kept nodding. Finally, I talked about my own experience. It was like a blank piece of paper. He graduated from NTU, and his family had some money. After graduation, he joined an uncle's company and worked for 2 years, and then he started his own factory. On the other hand, there is not much to say about love. What about falling in love in college, because of chasing girlfriends, fighting with people in the student union, and describing his college life very realistically, with nose and eyes? Feng Xiao sat on the side and could only sigh in his heart. Lu Feng's nonsense, and his ability to not leak, is really impossible for ordinary people to come. The key is that he also said very details. If he didn't know who he was, he would definitely believe it. I can see it at first glance. You are full of energy and simplicity. Mr. Hao slapped his mouth, as if recalling his student days. His student days stopped at 4th grade, then it was very simple. The two of them had a good chat. Before leaving, Lu Feng saw that he was still staring at his bag and said, Mr. Hao, would you like to wear it? No need. I don't have a lot of money, pure cotton socks, I think the quality is okay, I bought a few more pairs, and I'll get you a few pairs. Lu Feng was about to unpack the bag as he spoke. Mr. Hao waved his hand and walked out. What if he wants it? Feng Xiao asked aside. If he wants it, I'll take a look. If it's wrong, go back to the sock store and get it again, Lu Feng said to Feng Xiao casually, holding the bag. The more important something is, the more unimportant it is. Guessing, the key is to behave naturally. If you are a little wrong, the other party will see it immediately. I still need acting skills. There are so many things in life, acting skills, you have to learn to meet people you hate. Laughing, occasions that make you uncomfortable, those festivals where there is absolutely no need to greet each other. Lu Feng entered the elevator, looked at Feng Xiao and said, we are all actors in life. In the evening, at Howard Johnson Hotel in Gemdale, Lu Feng watched the time, just about to make a phone call to ask. The door of the private room was pushed open by the waiter, and Sister Yu was still dressed very elegantly. Hello, Sister Yu, Lu Feng stood up and said politely. Mr. Zhao walked in. Seeing his appearance, Lu Feng thought to himself that men still have to have money and power. Without these two things, there is basically no hope in life for a man like Mr. Zhao. This is President Zhao, Sister Yu introduced. Hello, hello, Lu Feng extended his hand and said politely. Mr. Zhao shook his hand, looked at Lu Feng, and glanced at Sister Yu next to him. He felt uneasy in his heart, and sat down without saying anything. Does Beigong owe you money? Mr. Zhao asked straight to the point. Yes, my factory can't hold it anymore. I came to ask for the account. I didn't expect it to be so difficult. Lu Feng sat down and said. Is there that bill? Here, 2 copies. Lu Feng took out the contract and handed it over, and said, "It's 21 million in total." "That's right, the first 18 million is the TV set that the 2 companies ordered from me, and the other paid the bill to this, and the latter 3 million was added later. I don't know how they did it." "Got it," Lu Feng explained. "Is this contract okay, sister?" you asked. "There is no problem with the contract. It is the contract of Beigong. Leave this to me. Let me tell you, it is not easy to get the account now. Even if it is moved to Shenfei's account, it may be a dead account." 18 million. Thank you so much." Lu Feng turned his head and said to the waiter, "I'll serve the wine first, and I'll toast Mr. Zhao." Mr. Zhao looked at the company written on it, GFN Electronics, and thought about it. It seemed that Mr. Mu had been talking about it recently, and asked, "Do you know Mr. Mu?" "Mr. Mu?" Lu Feng thought for a while and asked, "Which Mr. Mao? There is only one President Mao in China, who else can there be?"